I bought my first business when I was 25, and I didn't know the business of HVAC. You need to know the business of HVAC before you become a HVAC business owner.
You're obviously known for in the industry as you built Goettl. It's around a $10 million organization, and you roughly 20x that.
It was a struggling business. We went from 11 million losing 3 to 250 million with 11 locations and over 1,000 employees. I'm in the business building business. I build businesses and I sell them.
When do you think are the right thresholds to bring on a partner or to exit or to whatever that looks like? Welcome back to Owned and Operated. I am your host, John Wilson. Today on the show, I am joined by Ken Goodrich. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, this will be a lot of fun. It's good to have you on here. I'm excited. We're going to be talking some Goettl. We're going to be talking Kennerator, and I'm excited to just sort of hear about what you're up to in the industry these days. Obviously, you're an OG. You've helped build the industry into what it is today. So I'm glad to have you on.
Well, happy to share my experience and stories, and I've made that kind of a habit throughout my journey, my career, just as a forms to give back and actually, kind of like what you said earlier, like I help a lot of people because I always pick up some gems along the road too.
I was reading this was a decade ago, but the E-Myth Revisited for contractors. I think you're a sub-author in that. When did that happen?
So I'm a sub-author for the E-Myth HVAC Contractor with Michael Gerber. We published that in 2019, and we'll publish the E-Myth Plumber in January. It's ready.
Really?
And then just shortly after that, we'll come out with the E-Myth Electrician. So I've been busy with Michael Gerber for a long time.
Yeah.
We can get into the origin story of everything, but I'll kind of skip over some points to say this. I bought my first business when I was 25, and I was at AC Tech, learned from my dad, holding a flashlight at age 10. Mm-hmm. And worked every night, weekend, and summer on the roofs of Las Vegas, repairing and installing air conditioners. So, I got started pretty young. Bought my first business at 25, and probably like most everybody else, I knew how to repair them, and I knew how to kind of sell them, and do the work. And so I was going to go be a businessman. And then it took me about 2 years to figure out that. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know the business of HVAC. And through some trials and tribulations, I was able to get this E-Myth book, the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And, without going into all the gory details, a friend of mine had given me this book, and it was sitting on my desk. I hadn't looked at it for a couple months. It was sitting on my desk. And after the IRS came in and garnished my bank accounts and took half my trucks and all my employees quit that Friday, I sat down at my desk and I saw the cover that said, "Why most small businesses don't work and what to do about it." I said, well, this seems fortuitous. This thing's sitting on my desk. So I got the book and I started to read it. And, I'm thinking, man, this guy, Michael Gerber, he's been hiding in the bushes, because how does he know every stupid thing that I've been doing this whole time? But it really, I really got it. The way he wrote, I really understood the concept of a prototype business system and what processes are, and really how to innovate and quantify and all the pieces and parts to build a business system. And that resonated with me, so I was able to put a business system together. But so Michael Gerber was my original mentor back in 1988, and he didn't know it. And then sometime, I think it was about 2014, I meet him at an ACA convention, and I tell him my story. And he said, well, why don't you write the E-Myth HVAC book with me? And so it was kind of like, okay, I got to meet my mentor, and I got to, write a book with him. So kind of came full circle from that journey. But that's how I got to Michael Gerber. And then, we've been in the plumbing and electrical business as well. We started in HVAC, but so that's why I'm
Mhm.
wrapping up these two other books.
That is a fun way to get there. I I was I was I was thinking about this because I got started in the industry like I grew up in it, same as you, and I was trying to explain to someone that was newer to the industry, and I've been in it for like 20 years. And I was trying to explain to someone that the amount of content that's created now to help people build their business, like that wasn't a thing a decade ago. And there was HVAC spells wealth, which was really formative for me. That was a really important book for me. I don't remember when Tommy Mello's first book came out, Home Service Millionaire, and it was like a wealthy plumber book on Amazon back in 2010, and then E-Myth Revisited. But since 2020, so obviously including us, a lot of folks have started to explain it. So, but yeah, I think the addition to the industry is awesome. I'm just grateful that you've shared. I think it's been really cool, and I think it's awesome that you've been jumping on a lot of shows and sharing the story. I think it's been helpful.
You're great at fixing broken shit, so why not fix your lead flow? Well, Modernize gives contractors predictable, high-intent leads without the big marketing gambles. Break out of the feast and famine cycle and expand into new markets with a steady stream of homeowners ready to start jobs now. Modernize is trusted by founders like myself because it actually delivers. Over $4 billion in homeowner projects started here in the last 12 months. Visit the link below to get started.
Well, when I was struggling, I go back to the struggle days. I get a trade magazine, and I'm looking in the back, and it has an ad for an ACA convention in San Antonio.
Mhm.
And I'm like, how much money do I have? And I think I took my last $700 or something and got a plane ticket and signed up and went out there. And again, this is all before the computers, before the internet. I mean, there
Yeah,
was
yeah.
computers really, but the internet and not the access to all this information. And at that time, ACA was really it. It was the only kind of resource you had. And that particular resource leaned more on the technical side of the business. But still, I went to the convention and I got to meet some older dudes that were, seemed to have it going on. And I start talking to them, and they started sharing and, gave me a little bit more confidence, gave me some tips, and I started, forming myself in the industry with that community first. And I got to say, that's where I probably over the years have learned the most, is being at these various conventions and being intentional about being there to learn, really understanding what am I going to, what's my goals, what I'm going to come away with at this convention, not just bullshitting at the bar at the end of the day, but just, I got a mission here. I'm going to learn these things. I'm going to meet these people. I'm going to get this vendor tied up and make purpose out of it. And so throughout my journey, it's just been a regular practice to, be involved, share, share my best practices as a means of currency to get other people to share their best practices, so we can all grow and take us to the next level.
The thing that you're obviously known for in the industry is you built Goettl, which is one of the largest home service brands in the U.S. I think I might get some numbers here wrong, but I think you took it over in 2010 or 2011. It was around a $10 million organization, and you roughly 20x that over the course of a decade or so.
Yeah, I bought Goettl in January of 2013.
Okay.
And it was, at that time, it was a struggling business. It was doing 11 million in sales, losing 3 million. It had just been through some really bad reputation issues, this and that. But, I talk about holding the flashlight for my dad. Well, the reason why I had to do Goettl was because the first air conditioner I ever lit up with my flashlight when I was 10 was a Goettl, because they used to manufacture. And my dad said, this is the finest machine ever made. And my dad became a Goettl dealer. So I'm a kid. My dad's telling me Goettls are the best air conditioners made. They were bulletproof. They were, they were designed in the desert. So they were designed at 115 degree ambient, for 115 degree ambient. And, I grew up all with Goettl. And then, my dad passed away when I was younger, and I still lean on Goettl, and they were a big vendor for many, many years for me. So when the opportunity came to buy it, and they had a big service company is what I bought, but when the opportunity came to buy it, I just felt like it was my duty to do that. And by the way, they hold the first patents for the invention of the residential air conditioner. So I'm thinking,
Oh, interesting.
well, they invented the air conditioner. How can I screw that up? So I went and I took it. It was struggling. It was struggling bad. I right-sized the business. I put the processes in, and then I found a world-class copyright, Roy Williams, the Wizard of Ads. And, through a long process of trying to convince him to work with me, once I got that done, we created a brand story that had been really second to none in the industry and took it to where it went. But, from 2013 to 2020, we went from 11 million losing 3 to 250 million with 11 locations and over 1,000 employees.
Before I go into currently, I was in Phoenix 3 or 4 years ago, and I was really blessed. You weren't there, but I was introduced to Dale, and I was blessed to be given a tour of the facility.
Mm-hmm.
And we designed a lot of, so I've learned from you a lot, even though we haven't met in person. We've designed a lot of our call-by-call process back in 2022 based off of what you guys were doing, 4 or 5 years ago at this point. But it was really formative for us. It was very, very helpful. And that was in the early 2020s. So thank you. And it was a hell of a thing to walk through there, back in 2022 as well. So really peak COVID, and the place was just absolutely bumping, which was awesome. It was incredible to see. It was really inspirational.
Yeah, we built quite a dynamic business there. I've sold the majority interest in it. I'm on the board currently.
Yeah.
But yeah, we built something, but it was kind of my opus. I've done, Goettl was my sixth big business I've built in the HVAC space and sold HVAC and plumbing. My sixth
Really?
one. Yeah. And so
I don't think I knew that. That is interesting.
Yeah. So I built and sold 6 companies to either strategics like ARS or to private equity over the years.
Was that always the plan with Goettl? It sounds like it probably was, because it was your 6th one. So you had a sort of a roadmap of, hey, I'm going to build this and then transact at some point. I know for folks like me, this is our first one. So I think for us, that journey is starting to come where it's like, okay, I think we'll have to bring on money at some point. But when I set out, I didn't have it in mind that it would be an exit. So how did you think about that from the get-go?
I had been in it all my life. I bought a business when I was 25. I started going, like I said, a couple of years in, I got notified by the IRS. I didn't pay my payroll taxes. And I said to the IRS, the agent, I said, what's payroll taxes? Because I was so green, I didn't even know. And, that kind of sent me on the journey. And so I made a business plan at that point, because at that point, I was in a really tough situation, but I really couldn't get out of it because, you can't discharge payroll taxes in bankruptcy if you went bankrupt, for instance, and you can't. And I owed people money that I bought the business from. And so I was like, okay, well, I can't be the stooge that just fails in 2 years. So I have to gut this out and figure it out. So I wrote a plan. And the plan was like, okay, I got to get through this. I'm going to get through this and I'm going to build a business and I'm going to sell it. And I made the plan of what you have to do to sell it. You got to have a management team. You have to have some steady revenues and profits, things like that. And then I said, no, I was a young guy, like I was 26 or something. I said, I'm going to sell for $1 million. That was my goal, $1 million. $1 million. And I thought that was all the money in the world. But anyway, so I end up, we put it together and, I figure out, I create my EMIS system. And then I start buying either broken, bankrupt, or HVAC businesses where the guys are retiring or struggling, even old phone numbers from from companies that shut down or going to shut down, I'd gather up these phone numbers and I'd put them into the mix. And I started scaling my business by buying these inexpensive broken businesses. And I became good at it because I had fixed my own business and I figured out what the process is to build a business system, and I documented it. And so it was easy for me just to go ahead and start organizing these companies and putting the routines in. I had the plan to sell, and then I started building them up, and I got to where I had 3 locations when I was about 30 years old in Las Vegas. And that's when ARS, are you familiar with ARS, American Residential Services?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's when ARS was born. And they came to me and said, "Hey, why don't you join our roll up? You could be a founding member." And so, I was one of the 5, 6 guys who got it started, and then we built it. And I got, at that point, the business was worth a lot more than $1 million. I think I got, maybe 5, 6 times that. But I went out and I executed my plan. So I'm in my early 30s and I sell the business to ARS, and I'm in that world for a while. And so I had hit my goal. I wanted to build it and sell it and go figure out something else to do, because I hadn't done anything else all my life. I thought maybe I wanted to be a, stockbroker or something cool where you wore a suit and, that kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got into, when ARS bought us, I was very fortunate that I was able to get involved with these guys who knew a lot more than I did about business and a bigger scale business. By that time, I knew how to build an HVAC business system and a nice, high performing business, but I really didn't understand how to do multi-branch very well and M&A very well, and, real M&A, not just buying broken stuff, right? And so I worked there for a few years and I got a really good education there. And so I said, you know what? I'd really enjoy this. I enjoy now, because I'd be traveling around doing acquisitions and I'd see guys who did a lot better than I did. And I'm like, oh, I could have done that. Oh, I could have done that. I should have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it re-inspired me. So I decided back in 2000 to do it again. So I decided at that point, I'm in the business building business. I'm not in the HVAC plumbing business. I build businesses and I sell them, because I kind of like this whole deal where you sprint for 3, 4, 5 years, and then you sell it for 10, 15 years of profits, a nice little chunk of money, right? And I just like the idea of kind of being my own private equity shop. So that's what I did. And so I did the first one, did the second one in Vegas and Phoenix, called Yes Air Conditioning Plumbing, and various ones along the way. Yeah, and at one point after I sold Yes to ARS, I was a regional VP, or division VP, they called it, and they gave my team and I 7 businesses to fix for them, and a big reward for that. So, we put the team together and we just execute my plan on building a business system, get it implemented, get the right team in place, get them focused, and start driving results. So then I became the president of ARS for a while. So I was the president of this national company. I'm a guy, kids started in an AC van fixing air conditioners. Now I'm the president of this, $600 million business, national business. And, learned a lot more. Every time I had these opportunities to get with these bigger guys, I really picked up some new knowledge that, most of us from the industry, like yourself, who no different than me, you came from a family business, you're just not going to be able to experience it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
did that.
My hope, you're describing what I hoped my post exit life would look like, where how do I, the money's great, but like, how can you learn something interesting that, like, when would be another chance you'd get to go work somewhere with 200 locations, and, how else do you get that? So yeah, that sounds like amazing. That sounds like what I hope my post exit life looks like.
Yeah.
Learn, get paid to learn somewhere for 5 years and then go do it again. That sounds like fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's all I've been doing. And then, and so on this last deal with Goettl, we really rung the bell in a big way. We had a very, you know, industry leading exit.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, what's next? But I had this team, this business, this business development team that I've created over the years who knows, we attack leadership, management, money, marketing, lead generation, lead conversion, client fulfillment. We attack client fulfillment. We attack every chunk of the business right there. We get the processes documented, get into training, start training our people, start recruiting the team, getting the financial understanding of the operation, and keep going. So anyway, I sold the business in 21, and then I stayed as a CEO for 22. And then it was a planned retirement from HVAC. So they brought in their new CEO, and then I went off, and my team and we started attacking the standby generator industry. So I've been in that for end of year will be 2 years. So it's 2 years now. And we've had, we put together 4 locations, Dallas, Houston, Tampa, and South Carolina. Yeah, we're off to the races. We acquired 14 million in revenue, and we'll wrap up about 50 million with the same store growth this year.
Is there a Goliath store, or are they roughly equal? 50 million generators is a lot.
I know.
That's a lot of generators.
Yeah. Well, obviously, our 2 big stores are Houston. Houston's the number 1 standby market in the country, and then Tampa is our second. But
as you're thinking about this, so your Goettl was your 6th industry leading exit. As you're thinking of, and your whole life was sort of this HVAC, building and selling HVAC businesses, maybe like a Flare Plumbing in there too. But there was always like a buyer, like, because you knew the buying landscape. How do you think about that for standby generators? Because it doesn't seem like the buying, I just don't know. So I'm looking for education, but it doesn't seem like the buying landscape is as straightforward as HVAC.
Well, look, PE is all over Main Street. Every business there is, they're looking for opportunities, and yes, they're there. I can't help but think that, when I got into generators last year, there was one PE shop that had a meaningful business. They had rolled up, was starting to roll up, and they have a really nice thing going. But as soon as I got in and started talking about it, and I don't know if this is because I was talking about it or because just the natural things have happened, but there's been a lot more PE involvement. So there's a lot more competition for the businesses in the generator space today. I would say probably there's 5-6 PE shops sniffing around it. And then I get calls every single day from other PE shops that want to partner and see how they can get involved with it. But I want to get it, we're going to get a little bit beefier.
Yeah, that's really going to be my next line of questions. You've built a process now. You're in the business of building businesses. I think that makes a ton of sense. Most of my peers in the industry that are still privately held, I think, and including myself, there's a lot of question marks on, what's the right time to do something. Like I'm in one of these conversations once a week, with somebody, and I don't know the answer either. So usually I'm a participant. But as you're in this process and as you're building Kenerator, like when do you think are the right thresholds to bring on a partner or to exit or to whatever that looks like? Is it 10, 20, 30, or like measured by EBITDA? Like, how are you thinking about that?
Well, I would say, in its simplest form, you would do something like that. Like I've never done it just to bring on capital. I've done it to, de-risk, take some of the chips off the table. But you have to get it big enough, especially like a young guy like you got to get it big enough so your first take is chunky enough that, you don't just have to go right back to work. You can make some new plans with your life. You can go do another business. You can do it, or you can just completely retire. But I wouldn't, if you had a nice cash flowing business, and obviously if you build a business that is desirable and people want to buy, it's going to be a nice cash flowing business. And you really don't have a motive to exit. Either A, it's time, B, the money's too good. I got to get out and I can do other things with it. I can invest it in something simpler like real estate, or I wouldn't do it till you can have some meaningful capital. It makes meaningful capital out of it because, our kinds of businesses are pretty sturdy. They're not going away. They're kind of AI proof in terms of the labor, I think, or robot proof. So that's a big plus. It's a nice cash flowing business to own. So I hope I answer your question. It's, you got to make sure that you get it big enough to make enough money to really have some choices in life. And I'm not talking, you make $7 million and then you pay off your house and then you blow a couple $1,000,000 on big living. Now you're down to a few $1,000,000 and they're like, holy shit, I got to go back to work now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that. I know a lot of guys have done that. And I'll say this. A lot of guys have done this because they just want relief. They want relief from the hell of running a business. And that sounds good, the little break. That's also an option too. But me personally, who've done it a number of times, make sure that every chunk can materially change your life and give you a lot more choices in life before you get rid of the goose that lays the golden eggs for you.
Yeah, well, we've been pretty stubborn, and I think the goal, what I was trying to understand is there. So we're at like 4 million of EBITDA this year, and next year we're anticipating 7. We're doing some like add-on acquisitions, and I'm wondering, is there a point, and maybe it's 10 million of EBITDA, maybe it's 20. Like, I'm sure there's people that have bootstrapped their way up to it, but is there a point where like the incremental million of EBITDA isn't worth the energy, and you should just like partner with somebody? And I think that was the question, is like, I agree with you. If you're at 1 million of EBITDA, you should just keep going. If you're at 10, like, okay, is that the moment?
First of all, let me say this. 20 to 25 million EBITDA is the sweet spot. If you can get to that, you're going to get higher multiples. You're going to have bigger funds wanting to participate. That's typical, pay more, better financially backed, all that stuff. So that's really what you got to head towards, 20 to 25. And 25 is better, obviously. And that's where you'll start to get, mid-teens kind of numbers, right? So I think that should be your target, especially because it sounds like you're on a great trajectory anyway. I mean, 4 million EBITDA is a great living, right? I just say keep your head down and keep going. And then, I don't know if you're in a best practice group, but I recommend everybody be in a best practice group, or several. The top guys that we've all ran around together for all these decades, Dave Geiger, Leland Smith, and even Ron Smith. You mentioned Ron Smith, his book.
Yeah.
We all were in 2 or 3 best practice groups. And it's just to, understand new business processes and how to get it implemented. The network of other contractors that you get to lean on and talk to and share ideas is priceless. But that's where where you're at now, scaling, that can really help. And then I'll say this. With Goettl, I got it up to 7 million in EBITDA in 2018. And we took a PE partner then. And the reason why, because I started seeing that the thing was going to get to some bigger numbers that I hadn't been there yet. And I wanted some smarter partners to kind of guide financially. This is where we're going to have to start to use some debt to grow faster, some more sophisticated M&A process, things like that. And so I went with a small family office called Baum Capital out of Kansas City. And I did that because I just liked the guys. They were very sharp. They were, they had everybody's best interest at heart, and they had a clean plan. It wasn't some pie in the sky, this, and that we're going to buy 100 businesses, this, that. We had a clean plan. And so those guys really helped me execute well. So if you can find situations like that where they're not micromanaging, they're not armchair quarterbacking every single day, second guessing, trying to change everything, they're not doing that. And they're sitting back and kind of giving you a lot of rope and a lot of counsel and working on things that help the business that you never knew you could do, or you never wanted to do it. Like
Me too.
Insurance renewals every year, they really drill in them, and they actually save a lot of money that I never paid a lot of attention to personally.
Yeah.
I hope I'm answering your questions, but
I think so. I think it was a bit tactical. Yeah, I think it's a common question of when is the right moment. I think you're right. Most people do it way too early. Like they hit the minimum potential value and then they exit to take a break or whatever.
And I know why, because they have their management system set up, and they're just they're sticking their thumb in the dike and the leaks every single day, rather than having a good, clean business process and a team running the business.
I'm going to ask, this is going to be like a very general, probably a layup question, but I mean, what are the management system? Like, what are the big couple points on building that management system to plug those holes that you found? Because I think you're right. I think that is the big issue. People are tired of firefighting every day.
You have to have a management system, and I didn't understand this. I didn't understand this until, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. But once I understood you got to have a management system, there's a bunch of you can follow. There's Traction, EOS, right? There's Rockefeller Habits. We happened to land on a company called MAP, Management Action Programs, in Newport Beach, California, because they were close. And I had some employees that had gone through their coursework before, and they were just the best managers, hands down, because they were taught the skill of management, right? They were taught how to manage people. Most of us who came in the industry, we probably managed like the last dipshit who managed us, who didn't know how to manage, right? And so they taught a management system and a routine that has to go on every single day, starting with morning huddles and making sure everyone's heading the right direction, and the metrics and how you measure your performance and how everybody measures their performance, basic management functions, supervision functions, leadership functions. They really teach you that. And then they have a routine where monthly they come in and they have what they call vital factors meetings. And in the vital factors meetings, they have a facilitator that you can hire, no different than like EOS. You familiar with EOS?
Yeah. We've been EOS for a decade.
Okay. So, then the routine. Everybody should be in a best practice group and be operating with a management system, whether it be, like I said, EOS, Rockefeller Habits, MAP, or any number of other ones. And so once we got that down and we got the routine around the management of all this, then we use MAP as our, training ground. They would teach, like you'd take a really good technician that you wanted to start learning the subtleties of supervision. You send them there.
Mm-hmm. How early did you develop your own internal? Because I would imagine that at some point, fairly early, you had to take a lot of those practices and pair it with the things that made you guys you, and develop your own leadership program.
I would say that over the years, once I started getting into the multi-branch stuff, which was in the late 90s, you got to have a whole different mindset, right? Because now I have people running businesses that are 400 miles away. And so you had to have a management team. And so I'm a numbers guy. And so I kind of made it about the numbers, right? So we created a set of metrics that are measured from, number of call, the call goal for the day, to all the things that can happen and the average tickets that go on and what levers to pull, this, that, break it out between service and maintenance. And we had a system, right? And so, our routine was based on that. where we would have twice a week meetings, phone calls, and we just go over the numbers. How many calls, where are you supposed to be at for the month? I'm supposed to be at 212 calls. I'm at 206. Where's the 6 calls? I haven't got them. You're going to tell me that you booked 100%? No. Well, where's the 6 calls? Go get those 6 calls. It's that kind of routine. And then my conversion to service, for instance, is this much revenue, this much average ticket. The average ticket goes, I'm just making up numbers here, $850.
Yeah.
And you're at 600. Why? What are we going to do about it? What's the cause and effect? Everybody's camaraderie. They're saying, do this, try that, and it just kind of builds this routine amongst the management team. But that's how I started with the numbers. As I got a little more taught and sophisticated with it, we talked a lot about a lot more things like, HR related things, company culture, all that. But the fundamental of the business that works really well is keeping the numbers. You talked about call by call management. Everyone's hot to heavy with call by call management, but I remember when call by call management was invented, because it was 2005. And it was invented by Jeremy Prevost, who worked for me at Yes Air Conditioning and Plumbing in Vegas. And he created the call by call management system. He had created outstanding results in our plumbing businesses by that method. And we've been doing that for, like I said, since 2005. Now it's the new popsicle.
Tight deadlines, breakdowns, last minute jobs. That is just the life in the trades. And that's why we trust WeSupplyTrades.com. They're family owned, and with nearly a century in business, they stock thousands of HVAC, plumbing, and hydronics parts from brands that you already use. They're shipped fast and even same day if you order by 3:30 Eastern. With a free pro membership, you'll get better pricing, free shipping over $99, and real experts who actually know the field. Get 20% off your first order with the code OWNED20 at the link below. We Supply Trades, finally a supplier who actually gets it.
I'm thinking about this like leadership structure, the cadence of communication, the way you're holding accountable. All of it makes sense. I think it's helpful. If I put that in the context of, I'm going to say 2025, but insert any challenging year. I think there's leadership during like 2021, or like maybe not picking on a year specifically, but just when leads are easier to get. Versus like a 2025, the HVAC industry has like taken a punch, right? Does that change the leadership dynamic? Does it, like, how do you think people should be changing how they're working with their teams amidst? I mean, most people I'm speaking to are down kind of a lot in the last 2 quarters. So how do you think that changes it?
It shouldn't change it, because, what usually happens when leads are plentiful, people get sloppy and inefficient, because it's just all they get sloppy and inefficient. But, we learned a long time ago to measure the efficiency. And we also learned this, this business it comes in spurts. It's not long periods of revenue, right? It comes in spurts. It goes up and down. And, I know for sure in the summers in Phoenix and Las Vegas, the first 100+ degree day, maybe that heat spell lasts for 1 to 2 weeks. Then what happens? It rains, cools down the city. Then we have a few weeks where like we're checking the phone company to see if our phone line was shut off or not. So, it's not all up and to the right. So you have to be planning for that all the time. You have to be leading with the scarcity mindset that, I make every single opportunity count. I'm going to be as most efficient, and I'm going to keep that muscle memory and discipline up in my business. So when the lean times come, we don't go really rogue and go take our sloppy habits into a sparse lead flow environment, right? And so I tell my team all the time. I just had a team meeting this morning, and I said, listen, every single opportunity is gold. Every single opportunity counts. And one thing I've learned over the years is so many guys I've met have turned their business around. They've been struggling, thinking about going under, just can't seem to make it. And I said, go sit in the call center for the next 6 months. Just go sit in there and listen to what goes on and start driving traffic and see how you can tighten it up. And in every single case, they fix their business, because once you hear it, you hear the madness and nonsense that goes on, or that, things don't happen right, or, why'd you let that customer cancel? Or why did you should have said this, I need to revise my scripts. And that hub, that central meeting, that beginning customer impression is as tight as can be, so you can execute on the scarce number of leads that you have. So I guess it comes back to you have to act, even in the good times, with a scarcity mindset that, I have to be extremely efficient and make every single customer opportunity count, and keep that habit up when the lead times come.
This is a very different subject, but as I was thinking about you talking to your team, and at Kenerator, and obviously very different size team, right? From the previous one you were at, from Goettl. What's been your favorite size to run? Like, what's been the favorite section of business for you? Like team size, revenue size, what's been the most enjoyable? I feel like some people are the 0 to 1, some people are the 1 to 20. Like, where do you find enjoyment?
Once you start getting over 50 million in sales, things get a lot easier, because you can afford a management team. You can afford some high caliber management team. So I would say there, 100 million is a really nice business to have these days. But even I would say at the $250 million level, there's a lot going on. But again, I had the cash flow to have some very, very high caliber, talented people. And, it was probably one of the best times in business, because at that point, whatever I could imagine, whatever weird, wacky thought goes on in my brain, they can go get done. They could execute. I'd say, hey, what do you think about this? Let's do this. Let's make a plan. And they would execute and get it done, whatever I came up with. And so that's a great spot to be. So anywhere, to tidy up this question, anywhere you can get to where you can have a full management team, a real CFO, a real controller, maybe a real COO, somebody's on top of the day-to-day operations, a real VP of sales who's driving the sales guys. And, you're just, you're leading them through your vision. That's the best place to be.
It sounds like the best place to be. As you brought on those roles, did they grow in the business with you, or did you bring them on later on? I'm sure it was a variety of both, but at 250 million, how many of those senior leaders worked with you for 5 years up to that point?
Many of them, most of them.
Yeah.
We homegrown a lot of people, and we were able to, and this is another lesson I learned from this family office private equity group that I was involved in, BOM, is they kind of taught me how to really go after very accomplished, high caliber talent that came from different industries. Now, I've always had an eye for talent. If you want to know, one of my core competencies is I have an eye for talent, and I'm able to recruit them on my team. And I've always been pretty good at that. And which is a very necessary skill for every leader to have, right? You build your team. I mean, I literally by person have built the key team. But I would go out, I wasn't necessarily looking for industry type people, because, the business is mostly mom and pop, right? And so it's all family businesses, mom and pop. Like I said earlier, nobody's really had much management training, how to manage people. And, so there's just not a big talent pool. It's growing now, but we're picking everybody off from other big home service businesses, like True Green. Is a lot of True Green people in the HVAC business now, for instance. You got to be great at the talent thing. I'll tell you a quick story to that direction. When I told you about when I was working with ARS, and I had the 7 businesses to fix and all that. Yeah. So I was recruiting for that management team, and I was in California one time and at a family barbecue. And so I meet this guy, and he's relative or something. Or he's involved some way, but I meet him. I start talking to him, and he works for Otis Elevator, or worked. He was retiring, or he was retiring early. He was like 50, and he was a regional VP. And I said, "Well, what'd you ran?" He goes, "I ran, this region, about 500 million revenue, blah blah blah. How'd you get into that?" He's telling me, well, he went to Harvard. He was a Harvard MBA student. And he tells me the story on how Otis Elevator came to be the elevator giant, which was a roll up back in the 70s or 80s. And they went out and recruited MBA, Ivy League MBAs to be their management training ground for their branches, and they built their business that way. That's how they scaled that business. Interesting story. But so I decided I'm going to get this Harvard MBA to work for me. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it. I'm going to get a Harvard MBA on my team, just so I'll see if that means anything. So long story short, over time, I talk him into joining the team. But to that point, that guy now, he brought a lot. He brought a lot to our team. He brought new ways of thinking about things, looking at things, some technologies that I wasn't aware of. To be able to enlist people on your team with that caliber of people can really change the direction you're going in business. But, you have to have the confidence in yourself to be able to hire somebody with those credentials and not be intimidated by it or feel like they're going to take something from you, right?
And you think most owners are, I would assume, intimidated by that.
Yeah.
Which would make some sense. If someone was a technician, I think it's intimidating to hire a big role.
It is, but just remember, the way I cured myself. I think with these other businesses I was involved in and these bigger roles I was involved in, you figure out pretty soon that you can compete with most other people in business, right? And so that gave me a lot of confidence, and just practice. But I will say, the way that I conditioned my mind to be able to hire people that were smarter than me was, I'd said, but I'm the owner. This is my creation. I'm building this business. So I have to make it work. I have to stock it with the best team available and possible. So I need the confidence, like I'm building this, and my team has to have the best of the best on it, whether they're smarter than me or not.
Our next big hire is CFO, which, I've never hired a CFO. So that it'll be kind of fun to start figuring that out. Definitely intimidating. You don't know what you don't know. But asking a lot of people, best attributes, what did they look for, what made the right CFO tick, that's been really helpful. So maybe echoing the best practice group, because we were able to just lean on a lot of other members of our best practice groups of when did you hire a CFO, what size, and what did you look for, and that was pretty helpful. But it was intimidating. It is intimidating.
Well, here's what I learned from, again, another PE thing is that, over the years, we've hired many CFOs, but, that is a critical role, especially when you're dealing with a PE firm with a big fund and all that,
Yeah.
So, they really have to have a competent and experienced CFO. But I'll tell you, there's nothing better than having a competent and experienced CFO on your team. Not a glorified controller who, their last job, they called them a CFO, so they believe they're a CFO. A real CFO who really understands every financial aspect of the business. And a CFO is not necessarily going to be doing the accounting. They're not accountants, right? They're analyzing trends, and they're computing numbers for you, and pricing strategies and acquisition strategies, and doing the acquisitions, all that kind of stuff. But I would recommend, in probably the last 4 CFOs that we've hired in my various ventures, we were encouraged to use a headhunter. you know, pros that go out and find them, and they vet
Yeah.
them first. They vet them. You tell them what you're looking for. I mean, we went as far as, for instance, one of the headhunters said, okay, I'm going to interview Ken first and say, tell me what it's like to work for Ken. And, and then they interview other people what it's like to work for Ken. They took my version, and then they took some of my direct reports version. And, they were like really clear. They got this document out and said, let's just make sure the things are very clear before we even hired. Like, for instance, if Ken wants to call you on the weekend and ask you a quick question about the business, or he wants you to answer the phone. And that's a non-negotiable. When Ken calls you, and he's not going to bother you just to kibitch, but if he calls you, that means he needs an answer or something done right away. You answer the phone. And it's surprised how many people that turned off, and some candidates went away, but better to know now, right? Before they get there. So anyway, headhunter, you got to find a real headhunter specifically to CFOs, and that can really be a great add to your team.
Yeah, we're excited about it. I think it'll change, and I appreciate that perspective. I think it'll change the shape of the business quite a bit. And a few people have echoed exactly that, like, hey, the right CFO moves the business forward, and the wrong CFO doesn't. They don't, or they move you backwards. But the right CFO is like a force multiplier. So
here's how you know how you picked the wrong one. Well, I mean, I've had so many, ventures and people come and go on my business career, right? So, but when you get a new controller, okay, a new controller, call it a bookkeeper, right? And then they come back and they say the last person messed it all up and they didn't know what they were doing. I don't know what it is about accountants. They always kind of point the finger backwards. But the ones who don't point the finger backwards and they just deal with what they got to deal with and they get stuff fixed and move on, that's the gem, not the one that keeps complaining about the last person that was here. What best practice group are you in?
We're in a few. We're big believers of talking to as many people as possible. Because honestly, it's one of the reasons we've done the podcast. But we're in Nexstar, and we're in what's now called Certain Path. But we were in it when it was Success Group International. But then the show has helped expand the network probably a lot wider than a best practice group. We're on episode 300, I think, almost. So we've been able to meet a lot of people, which has been really helpful. So and learn. Today I learned quite a bit.
I think Nexstar has a great system. I always have. It's probably one of the gold standards of the best practice groups. I think I was only a member for, I think, a month, and then I sold the business. So, but I'm a member of Certain Path for the Kenerator business.
Yep.
And we've always been a member of Service Nation Alliance, always been members and get good rebates and such. And I actually think the serviceroundtable.com tools are very good. I've used for years.
We might even be a part of Service Roundtable. I just don't think I engage in it very much. But we're definitely, Certain Path has been great. Nexstar has been great. It feels like there's a lot of different tools. And I just think my feedback has been, find the ones that work for you, find the ones that work for your team, take a little bit of the best from wherever you can get it. But also just talk to as many people as you can. Because I think the peer learning and the talking to other contractors is where I've learned the most.
Yeah. I mean, I like that Nexstar kind of has a operational order about it, about when things should get implemented and things like that. So, a guide like that, I believe.
I think so. We joined a little bit larger. So when we joined, we were already 20 million of revenue. So a lot of that stuff, I think we had already had it in place from Certain Path. Which was,
I like Certain. I mean, I was in Airtime 500 and PSI. Yeah. Sounds like you were too. Yeah. I was in both of those.
Yeah. And I think they're both additive to the industry. I don't know how much having no PE inside Nexstar really changes the dynamic. initial thoughts on that?
I've had a lot of PE guys ask me that very question. And, here's what I have to say. I think the fundamental system of the fundamental Nexstar system, if you implement it, is very sound, and it's it obviously works because most of the top businesses in our industry used it, right? So you can't argue about that. That said, I mean, I understand business models very well. I can go watch a company for a little bit and tell you exactly what their business model looks like, or what their drivers are. And so I know this for sure. The Nexstar system probably has its limit on scalability because it doesn't address some next level stuff that have to be included to scale. Again, I'm not that deep involved in the system. This is just from my observations and friends that have been involved in it. This and that. I just think it hits a wall for PE when they're just trying to get all these locations going, and that's where, you can probably be led down the wrong direction.
Who do you think does solve it, or how do you think people get the answers for what's next? So I'll tell you where we're struggling. I don't even know if it's with. I don't think it's with Nexstar at all, frankly. They might have the solution for this, they might not. But we're prepping to go multi-location. We're closing 2 acquisitions right now, and we'll probably close 2 more next year, so 4 in the next 12, 13 months. Some are local, but one's a state away, and the other one's probably going to be a state away too. And the biggest challenges that I see for our next 12 to 24 months is multi-location management, and that doesn't seem to be covered. So most of where I've learned that is just by talking to people. But where do you think the answers that aren't there would be found?
You just got to come out to Vegas and hang out with me for a couple days. I mean, that
sounds great. Sounds great. Sign me up.
I don't know of any group that's teaching that. I know that Gary Elix, who are you familiar with Gary?
I'm not. No, I'll look him up though.
So Gary Elix he's been a decades long industry leader, consultant, contractor, owns iMarket, Market Solutions, the digital marketing business. He's been all over the industry. He knows multi-branch business, and he's starting a best practice group called The Contractor's Edge.
Okay, interesting.
So look that up, The Contractor's Edge. So he's a great resource. I mean, I found that guy in the late 90s. He had a website, and he would share some of his ideas, and I just absorbed that stuff, the math behind the business, how to do the pricing correctly, how to figure out efficiency, how to apply your day labor rates, your hourly labor rates, all your stuff, right? And I just absorbed that stuff, and he really took me to a whole nother level. And he's been a friend and mentor since. So, but in terms, you're right though. I don't think anybody's teaching multi-branch leadership, management, how to pick the right manager, this or that.
Yeah.
But I have a proven system because I've had 5 multi-branch companies. Well, come to think of it, 6, now 7 multi-branch businesses that I've built. So, and it's really goes to what's your dashboard, what's your numbers, and it's daily accountability to those numbers against your plan every single day, right on top of them. And it keeps your team focused. It keeps those managers paying attention to what's important because they know they're going to be talking to you or the COO about it soon. And then, the routine that we created, like I said, Tuesday calls and Friday calls for an hour. We go through every single branch. They go through their numbers, and it's kind of a, fast-paced thing. If they're up, great. What are you doing right? If you're down, okay, how are we going to course correct? Get input from the team, blah, blah, blah. Give them a little motivation. Let's go to the next one. And it's that constant routine that keeps them straight down the middle. It's when you're not managing at that level and you're just letting them show up and let the wind take them where they may go that day, that's when disaster is going to happen. You're welcome to come out anytime, though, and we'll kind of show you the routine in Vegas or Phoenix.
Yeah, I'd love it. Well, I appreciate you walking us through. I mean, this was a wide-ranging conversation, but I was thankful for all of it. What's next for you, Ken? You're building Kenerator. You've launched training. I've got the name, the J. Duncan Goodrich Air Conditioning Technology Institute. You're building skilled trades. I mean, you're still involved in a lot. You're on the board of Goettl. What's next in your life?
Well, you know, that was the J. Duncan Goodrich HVAC technology lab was a endowment I created for the College of Southern Nevada, and this goes back to '08, the Great Recession, and they were going to shut down the school, so I funded it, and they named it after my father, which was quite an honor. And so, you know, we have various endowments for that school. We provide scholarships. My family office. We provide scholarships for that school. We created a 9/11, a post 9/11 veteran tool award. So any post 9/11 veteran that graduates from the HVAC program, we give them their first $1,500 worth of tools to get started. When they graduate, awesome. Things like that. So yeah, we've been heavily involved in that. I'm just building I'm building my business, my Goodrich Business Builders business. And so we have the generators coming along right now, and we're going to work on exiting the next 12 to 18 months. And then we've got some other small businesses percolating right now that we're building. So, you know, I have my own version of a PE firm, which I have operating, you know, partners that come in and just grab a hold of these businesses and tighten them up and document the process and put the team together and grow them. And so,
sounds like fun.
I enjoy doing that. And, you know, we're just going to keep that going. And hopefully, you know, I want my team that's been with me a long time, I want them to succeed and take it on when I don't want to work anymore. I got my son involved. He's going to work on it too. But I will tell you this, for young guys like yourself and anybody else younger listening, the greatest opportunity of all times right now is the silver tsunami, which is all the baby boomers are retiring. Most of all the wealth and most of all the businesses are owned by baby boomers, and a lot of them don't know what to do with them. They don't know how to get rid of them. Nobody wants them. Their kids don't want them. And most of them will end up closed down. And so for young guys that can understand some of the fundamentals, like we talked about today, like the management system, like the vital factors, the metrics of the business, the numbers, the math behind the business, like getting involved in a best practice group and whatever that industry is, you young guys can get a hold and get a hold of a business with not a lot of money, probably owner financing. There's a lot of SBA money floating around right now, and get into a business and grow it and sell it. And by the way, let me say this. Everything we do, we start with what we call the 1,000-day plan. So when I told you the Goettl story, when I sold a chunk of it in 2018, I brought the management team together. You mentioned Dale Steele, which was a key guy for me for a long time. And we brought him in and said, okay, look, here's your equity. Here's your profits interest in the business. If we get to here, this is what it's going to be worth. Now, we are going to come together as a team and make a plan to where we're going to 10x the value of the business in 1,000 days. And how do we do it? And so it's a big whiteboarding session over the weekend. How are we going to do it? Sounds impossible, but how do we make it possible? How would we 10x the value of the business? Now, obviously, depending on the market conditions, the market has to cooperate, which happened to do at Goettl. And, you know, interest rates were favorable. All this stuff was really, really set up well for us. But we put an entire plan together with a Gantt chart, here's what's got to be in place every month. Here's our set revenue and our profits and our operational excellence tools and need to be in place. Here's our people. Here's our trucks we need, facility, whatever we thought we need. And then we would just continually massage that plan. And so on the Goettl deal, for instance, we closed the transaction for 10 times the value that we got on the first transaction on day 996. And it's because we had a plan. And
That's pretty good.
we really looked at it like, what's possible? What's really possible? And challenge your team way than just saying, we're going to be here in 2 years, really bear down on something, a nice sprint. So we have our 1,000-day plan going for the generator business, which, ends end of December next year.
We started working through our value creation plan. It's not 1,000 days, but it's the same. It's sort of a similar process of like, all right, here's where we have to be, which is as deep as I had previously gone, which is, hey, this is where I have to be. And fortunately, I was encouraged to go deeper. So we did. And now it's okay, here's exactly what we have to do to get to where we have to be. So, but I didn't assign the 1,000 days. I think I like that clarity to it. You guys achieved the mission.
You got to put a time frame to it. And, it kind of goes like, it doesn't mean you have to sell it. You're just 10xing the value.
Yeah.
But, now because of all this PE and valuations of businesses really kind of come to the forefront on most people's heads, certainly in our industry, you kind of understand how to value a business. And so it's not bad for you to wake up one day and say, well, all right, the family has decided that we want this family asset to be worth $100 million by this time, whether you sell it or not, but it's nice to know what your value is, right?
Yeah.
And certainly keeps you down the right path of growing it the right way, making sure you have all the tools in place, the right team in place, and everything's firing all cylinders. And I want to say this one last thing before we get off, because I just, as a public service message, I can't tell you how many guys find me every single week. Like, people are tracking me down every single week to talk to me about air conditioning business, right? And a lot of them are young guys who are just starting out, and it always goes like this. Hey, Ken, I just gave my notice at work and I bought me a van and I'm going to get started in 2 weeks, and I want, can you give me some words of wisdom, of how I should start? And I said, yes, I have some very good words of wisdom. Go back to your boss, tell him you made a mistake and you're not ready to go. And can you have your job back? 99% will take you back. Then you go to a best practice group, and that's your night job. Your night job is you go to Service Excellence called Todd Lyle, who has a Spark program that will tell you how to get to your first million. The fundamental tools that you'll need to start your first million. You'll come away with a business plan and understanding what the math behind how to charge, how to price, how to pay an employee, how to manage the basic fundamentals of managing them, the numbers behind the business, so you have a fighting chance. Otherwise, I got through my hell years ago, but depending on where you're at in life, I didn't have a family. It was just me. I could work 20 hours a day if I had to, and I pulled it off. But man, you got a family that's counting on you, and you get yourself in a hole running one of these businesses. It's a tough spot to be. Don't get yourself there. Go prepare yourself first. And I would say this, for the guys that are listening that are a little ahead of themselves, who didn't do what I said here, and they've got out, maybe they got a $2 million business, but it's just on fire every single day and a big mess. Scale the business down to a more comfortable level, to where you can make the living that you need to make. Don't try to push it. Just say, I got my house and kids and family covered. We're all eating and everything's fine. Get to that place, then go to the best practice group, learn what you're supposed to do, and implement the system before you can go further. Stop pushing the business past, past the point of you allowing you to have time to build the business. Make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think the phrase I used that helped me with this was personal development is the same as business development. So, the business can't grow faster than you. And if it does, it'll collapse. So yeah, I think the scale down and like get yourself educated, catch yourself up. So, like that resonates with me.
Yeah. It's really saying the same thing. Fix yourself.
Yeah.
Fix yourself. You need to know the business of HVAC. You already know the trade of HVAC. You need to know the business of HVAC before you become a HVAC business owner.
Yeah.
And look, that piece of advice will save people 5 to 10 years of complete and utter hell. You agree?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I've bought a lot of those guys. Like, I'm sure you have too. But I've acquired a lot of customer lists because they're just like, I can't do this anymore. And they got to $500,000 in revenue, and I agree. They knew the trade, but they didn't know the business. Ken, this was awesome. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and your thoughts with us today. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, happy to. And you ever want to come out our way? People tour our Goettl operation all the time, and so just hit me up and I'll get you scheduled.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken.